All right, let's go ahead and get started then. This is the OpenStack Infrastructure Team project update. I don't know that we've actually given one of these before, so this may be the first one we've done. I'm Clark Boylan, the current PTL for the team, but a couple of the former PTLs are here in the audience. So if you have questions, you can heckle them too. So a little bit about what we do. We provide the developer infrastructure and tooling for the OpenStack project, so code review tools, CI, infrastructure testing, the wiki, collaboration tools like Etherpad, and so on. We both build and manage and operate those tools for the project. Because this is a cloud project, we do eat our own dog food. We operate all of the systems that we run on top of OpenStack clouds. These are donated to us by member companies and folks involved in the project, and we are very grateful to them for the donation of resources that they give us. It is incredibly helpful and allows us to do this work with a very small team. Currently, we operate in 6 clouds, one of which we operate ourselves. But City Cloud, the Infra Cloud, is the one we run ourselves. Internap, OVH, Rackspace, and VexHost. Over the last cycle, we did lose a cloud that we had access to, which was a little bit disappointing. But it wasn't the first time that has happened, and we've managed to move forward and carry on. So that's the current state of the clouds that we operate on. For Infra Cloud, it is a community-managed OpenStack cloud. You too can help us with this. It runs on Mitaka, and it is deployed using the OpenStack Puppet modules and Ubuntu packaging. So it's not a very large cloud, and it's fairly straightforward, but it is community managed and run. And if you're willing to, you can join us and help us out there. Another big thing that has happened over the last cycle was a fairly large Gerrit upgrade. So Gerrit is a code review tool. I think many of the developers are familiar with it. We upgraded from Gerrit 2.11 to 2.13. I think one of the things I'm pretty happy about with this upgrade is we're only 2 commits diverged from the Gerrit upstream. In the past, we've carried lots of local patches to Gerrit, and that hasn't always been the easiest thing to do. And with this current version we're running, it's only diverged by 2 commits, which is pretty good for us. That said, a lot of the changes in Gerrit from this upgrade were not very user visible. It's largely a bug fix update. There's better memory management, so we don't have to restart the server as often. The user interface works a little bit better on mobile for doing code reviews. It's still not amazing, but it's a lot better than it was. And then little details like votes in the event stream always show up inside the event stream. It used to be that if a vote was pre-existing, you didn't get that data the next time it was applied. And this helps tools like Zuul, which we will talk about shortly. And hopefully this is a stepping stone to doing much larger Gerrit upgrades to the 2.14, 2.15 series, which is a very substantial upgrade compared to where we're at today. So hopefully this helps prep us for that. So Zuul. Zuul is our CI/CD tool. It executes the continuous integration jobs for OpenStack. So anytime you push code to Gerrit, Zuul then takes that data, tests it, and posts results back for code review. We've run Zuul for many years, but very recently we did a major version upgrade that Jim has been working to prepare for quite some time now. So I think we're all very happy to have that mostly behind us. It adds significant new features that we're very happy about. One of them is job definitions are now Ansible, which is a tooling framework that many people are familiar with. With the old system, we used a custom language that came out of the Jenkins job builder, and many people weren't familiar with it, and it wasn't always the easiest thing for people to interact with, but now it's Ansible. And the hope there is that because it's a common tool, people will be more familiar with it, and it'll be easier to onboard because the docs are there and there's a community around it. It also does things like pre-merge testing of job config, so you can now propose a change to the job itself, and it will be tested before the code merge. This is for most job configs. We still have to restrict it for things that handle sensitive data. And so it can handle sensitive data now directly in the Zuul config itself, so projects can have their own secrets. Say, a current example is the Loki project is using that to handle authentication to Docker Hub. We have no idea what the actual secret is. They get to manage that all themselves, and they can upload images to Docker Hub. There's also built-in multi-node support. So in the past, multi-node jobs were supported, but it was kind of a hack around the way that we handled job execution. And you'd always have one node in the job that was the primary node that then had to talk to everything else, whereas now Zuul v3 is multi-node aware and can speak to any of the nodes in a multi-node node set. And additionally, in addition to being able to talk to all the nodes, the nodes no longer need to be homogeneous, so you can have different operating systems or different sized instances, for example, and Zuul is able to handle all of that. Paul gave a presentation on migrating from the old Jenkins Job Builder configuration to the new Zuul v3 configuration earlier this week. Here's a link to it, and I believe that was video recorded, so you should be able to go back and actually watch that presentation, which covered the process of making the leap to the new version of Zuul. Here's a slightly condensed example of a real DevStack job config from Zuul v3. I've trimmed it down so it fits up here a little bit better, but the job configs now are very flat and basically point off to Ansible playbooks, and that's where you find all of the logic. This is kind of a big change from before when configuration and logic were all smashed together in Jenkins Job Builder, and that could often be confusing to people, but this is actually from the DevStack job we're using. It defines a node set, which is where to run the job. It says these are the required projects. So to build an OpenStack cloud with DevStack, you need things like Cinder, Glance, Keystone, Neutron, and Nova. It depends on roles from the OpenStack Zuul jobs repository. And then pre-run is what happens in the early stage of job bootstrapping. Run happens at the actual job execution, and then post-run is for anything that you might need to clean up or collect logs from. And then we can pass in some bars, like say set the admin password or disable some DevStack services. So it's much more readable, we think, and straightforward to use these jobs. They are different though, and that is part of the transition is learning the new configuration. As for the future, we do have some potential new clouds in the pipeline that we're hoping to add on in the future. That's still being sorted out, but we lose clouds, we add clouds, and we're hopeful that moving forward we'll continue to be able to add new clouds. The plan is to upgrade to Gerrit 2.14 or 2.15, depending on how that upgrade shakes out. This will actually make significant changes to the user experience of Gerrit. The poly-Gerrit UI is different than the current Gerrit UI that we're using. It adds the NoteDB, which is where Gerrit actually stores its information in Git itself, rather than using an external MySQL database. There's this thing that Gerrit calls hashtags, which is basically just a way to tag specific changes, which could be used for all kinds of things. I think we probably need to deploy it before we really get into that. And then one that is useful for our use cases is you can delete branches using an ACL in these newer versions, which will help the release team clean up old branches and manage the branches directly. And then there's the path to the actual Zuul v3 release. Right now we're running Zuul v3, but it hasn't been released. We're sorting out bugs that we're finding, and there's a few features that we want to add in before we make the actual v3 release, like a dashboard. We want to make sure that we're commenting on and working with things on GitHub, because we expect that many users outside of OpenStack will actually be using Zuul that way, so we want to make sure that it's robust and working properly. Inline commenting on changes, so if you run a linter job, it says line whatever 50 has this problem, we can then leave a comment in, say, Gerrit or even GitHub diffs on that line saying, here's the specific problem. And then we want to also add a diverse set of Nodepool backends. So Nodepool provides the test instances to Zuul. We use OpenStack, so our Nodepool currently speaks to OpenStack, but not everyone is necessarily going to have an OpenStack cloud, and we want to provide a larger set of options for where to pull test instances from. Um, we are now on the OpenStack TC top 5 help wanted list. Basically, we could use more community infrastructure sysadmins. So if folks are interested in hacking on Unix, Linux systems on top of OpenStack clouds, we are looking for help with that. At this link, there's a kind of the description of what the TC's put together, and from there you should be able to find more information. Jeremy is listed as the contact there, and you can always reach out to him for getting bootstrapped there. But you don't only have to go to Jeremy. We don't bite. I think we're a friendly group of people. We can be reached on IRC, on Freenode. You can email us at our mailing list. In person, we tend to end up at PTGs and here at the forum. And then we have a documentation site. So feel free to reach out to us. Direct communication is often the easiest way to get to the bottom of things and sort out where to go, and I think that's useful. So, any questions? I think I've got quite a bit of time, so if there are any questions, happy to take them. Yeah?
You said Zuul V3 has not been released yet, right?
Correct.
And so if you were to use the Nodepool for my own projects, which version, or is it supported first of all? And if so,
So the question is Zuul V3 not yet released? And that is correct. And then considering that if I wanted to use Nodepool from different projects, how is that, in what way is that supported? So Nodepool does have, I guess I shouldn't call it a relatively simple API, but the way you make reservations in Nodepool is via Zookeeper resource locks. So you could run a Nodepool today without a Zuul. You would just have to negotiate that resource lock in Zookeeper. So whatever tool that you're building on top of Nodepool or using it with would just have to say, hey, I want this resource, lock it, and then when it's done, unlock it so that Nodepool can clean it up. I don't know that anyone's doing that yet, but in theory, that's a potential way of using it there. Sorry?
So if I were to set up this infrastructure, Zuul infrastructure in my private cloud, for example, OpenStack cloud, can I still do it? Are all the relevant packages available or instructions?
Yeah, so the question is, if you wanted to deploy Zuul and Nodepool on top of an existing private cloud, is that doable? And I would say yes. I think if you're doing it today, you'll probably want to work with us because we are in the process of writing out the documentation for doing things like that. And packaging, I mean, we're doing source installs, so that's doable. But that said, it's still kind of in that growth mode of we're trying to get everything solid so that we can do a version 3 release. But if you're willing to work with us, and I think that's valuable as well because having real users testing it and using it, it provides great feedback for things like documentation and such. And some people are using it that way. I believe BMW has an instance running it, and like GoDaddy as well. And so people are doing it. Just work with us because it probably isn't going to be the smoothest thing today.
Using Zuul V3 or original Gerrit stack?
Yeah, so they're using Zuul V3, and I believe with Gerrit as well.
Okay.
GoDaddy is with GitHub, though, I think. Okay. Any other question? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Everyone talks about containers. Nodepool currently provides VM. You talk about other type of resource for Nodepool. Is that container?
Yeah, so the question is, I've spoken about Nodepool supporting other backends, and today it's predominantly providing VMs. Are containers a potential other backend? And yes, so Tristan at Red Hat has been working on implementing both the plugin interface in Nodepool for backends, but has also worked on I think an OCI, Open Container backend. So that's one of the first kind of going into that. In theory, you could use others as well. It's a fairly generic interface of give me a resource and return its IP address so that I can connect to it. So anything that can kind of support that level of functionality should work. Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? Okay. I think I'm done then. Thank you.